than you think, you know. And so they end up with something over oaked, and because they didn't hold back some to blend back because they over oaked, then they're stuck, you know. And their friends are all telling them, "No, dude, really, this is great." And so they enter it in the Mazer Cup and get down checked.
And someone has to bite their tongue from writing Chateau plywood on the
list. Yeah, because we're not allowed to
plywood.
Yeah, that's AJ's term for over oaked mead is Chateau plywood.
Actually, someone else on Got Mead came up with it. I just can't remember who. I'd have to actually go look it up again. But I learned the hard way that if you have a wine kit with oak chips and you decide you're going to make an ice style wine by only diluting your wine kit out to 3 gallons instead of 5 or 6, don't use all the oak chips for as long as they say to. Yeah. Otherwise, you get Chateau plywood.
Yeah.
I also learned it does eventually age out to something quite nice.
Yeah, but it might take 4 or 5 years, yeah.
No, it was about a year.
Yeah.
No.
Josh Holbrook was asking, what do you feel is the toughest style to do well?
Toughest style to do well? You know, I haven't had a lot of good trads.
Yeah,
there you go.
I have to agree with you there. It's hard. There's no place to hide.
Yep.
And I think, people, number one, use just crap honey.
Well, yeah.
And then they ferment it too dry, and it's like boozy, and then they try to acidify it, and they over acidify it. So I think probably trads. You got to buy good honey, and you got to find that balance.
You got to nail the. You got to nail the ferment too, man. There is no screwing up at all.
Yeah,
right. It's kind of like making a pilsner, or
right. That's one thing I've
nothing
never
to hide
heard,
behind.
I've never heard if there is a particular honey that would be recommended over all other types to do a traditional.
Orange Blossom.
Orange Blossom and Tupelo.
Yeah, Orange Blossom and Tupelo. And I would add to that Fireweed. Fireweed's nice.
No.
Another one that's really hard to do is a braggot.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Most of the braggots that I've had were out of balance. They weren't like horrible, but they were just out of balance. I've had some good ones, so I know what a good one tastes like. I mean, if you want to taste a good braggot, at least on the professional side, get anything from Rabbit's Foot. Every one of his braggots is dead on the money. They're so good. And I'm not a braggot person, but I like his. And, I've had a lot of bad ones, too. That just like were, whoa, what were you going for here?
Right, yeah. The honey often gets lost. Mm-hmm. And they're just way out of balance one way or the other.
Yeah. Bobby added sourwood to the great traditional honeys. I would have to agree. Sourwood is a really, really nice honey. I'm curious on, do you back sweeten?
I do. And some people say you can't and you shouldn't.
A lot of people now are saying it's easier to just go ahead and do it.
And to me, it's a flavor thing, and if you know the flavor or the balance, it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Because often, so the problem is people want to make something sweet or semi-sweet. So on a homebrew scale, anyway, maybe on a commercial scale, it's different. I have never brewed on a commercial scale. And I don't have a sterile filter. So on a homebrew scale, you're either going to have to make that OG so high that you're going to run into the alcohol toxicity for whatever yeast you're using so that it just stops, or you're going to have to let it ferment dry and back sweet. Mm-hmm. You really don't have an option. I've tried stopping yeast, and it doesn't work on a homebrew scale.
No, it really doesn't.
Never.
Like you say, unless you've got the ability to sterile filter, you're not going to be able to stop it. And I've seen people claim all different things, and it's like, and I've also seen bottle bombs, lots of them.
Oh yeah. Oh, and that yeah.
Yeah.
So what I do is so let's take the example of a session mead. So I'm gonna aim for. I've got one going right now. I've got some mesquite honey, and I calculated out that I want my OG at 1050, and I threw my 71B in there, and that's going to ferment to dry, and so that's going to be like a 5, 6, 7% ABV mead. And once it comes out of primary, I'm going to sorbate it, and then I'm going to back sweeten it with the same honey to around 1024, because to my palate, that's semi-sweet. This one is going to get some lime added to it, so it's going to be a lime mead. So you have to, and it's probably going to be force carbonated. So at that point, experience comes into play, because what you're going to want to do is find that sweet spot between the residual sugar, or the sugar you've added back, the flavor of the lime, and the carbonation you're going to add. And, so that's where, like I said, experience comes in, because you want to, play around with this. But if you start with trying to hit a back sweetening level of around 1020, that's semi-sweet. But a lot of things come into play there as well. If you're using a really tannic fruit, that 1020 may be dry. It may be perceived as dry, even though you're measuring that level of sugar in there. For example, I've made blackcurrant meads that I've back sweetened to 1040, and they taste semi.
Right.
Just because of the huge amount of tannin and acid from the blackcurrant.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually opens up another question that I would have, where there on Got Mead a couple of years ago, there was a big debate about whether back sweetening with raw honey versus back sweetening with a neutral sweet mead. Some people said, me included.
Right. Right. That's it. Yeah, you can do either. And sometimes there have been a few occasions where a mead I have made has either been too dry or too sweet, and rather than back sweetening, I will make a mead in the opposite direction with the same honey. So it's too sweet, I'll make a dry mead and blend it, or if it's too dry, I'll make a sweet mead and blend it.
Mm-hmm. Pete Bachlich always says that if you make one batch, you should make 3 batches, and that way you've got blendability, depending on where you decide to go with it.
Yeah, and that works out sometimes if you have the capacity to make different meads, or if you're just you're trying to rush this out or get it ready for a certain thing. Maybe you can, if you have the time, make that other mead and blend it, or maybe you're just going to back sweeten it, depending.
Yeah.
But for a session mead, I know I'm going to ferment it dry. I know I'm going to back sweeten it, and I've done enough of these where I've got it kind of figured out. It was like, I had this much honey, it's going to get me to that sweetness level, and I'll hit it with some CO2 and some lime. It'll be just a nice, refreshing session mead.
Josh is asking, how often is the difference between a bad traditional and a good traditional? The difference between final gravity 0.998 and 1.004.
I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is fermentation mostly. Mm-hmm. Bad fermentation.
In my experience, it's been fermentation problems. So there's off notes. It's not. I mean, I've had super dry traditionals that were very well balanced. They were not something that I like, because I don't like super dry traditionals. Generally speaking, it's not. I'm more of I like something somewhere between off dry and semi sweet, but. That, a super dry, well balanced with a clean ferment is really nice. It's very excellent,
It's just hard to do. Hard to do a dry mead.
You have to be perfect. I'm not good at perfect.
They do. They do.
I'm really not good at perfect. All it takes is one temperature spike. Or, or the yeast isn't 100% happy with the nutrient, or the honey isn't exactly right, or it has an extra high water content, or God, there's so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I like wine, and most wines are dry, but I generally don't like dry meads. I can probably count on one hand the good dry meads I've had over the course of the last, 10 years.
Oh, next time you're in Michigan, go over to Cellarman's. They make some amazing dry sessions that are to die for.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just they're in the Detroit area. Next time you get over there, check it out. Trust me. And I don't like dry meads. I like their meads. They made smoked cherries. Smoked cherries.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's kind of
good. The day I went to visit, they had a grill. They had a smoker going, and they're basically just layering cherries on the smoker.
Oh my God.
Michigan,
seriously?
Seriously, Michigan cherries,
Nice.
and they're just layering them on the smoker and smoking cherries. And I was like, and then they let me have some of the smoked cherries. Just the cherries alone were to die for, And then they let me have some of the mead. Oh my God! And everything they do is either dry or off dry.
Really?
Not a sweet mead in the house. Yeah, they were stunning. They have one that they call they call it Moscow Miel. And it's styled after a Moscow Mule, and it's just so refreshing and so good. And they put their stuff in. They do mostly tap, but they also have a crowler machine. So I walked away with like half a dozen crowlers of various stuff. That was like just ridiculously good.
Wow, that sounds yummy.
Yeah, you got to check them out. They don't distribute though. They're still pretty small, but their meads are very good.
I just wrote myself a note.
Yeah, it's called Cellarman's, and it's in I want to say Hazel Park, but it's out. It's like just north of Detroit, in one of the suburbs. So since you're over there, of course, you'll also have to go to Shram's and Be Nectar, and Dragon's Mead is there, and who else is there? Kunin's is over on the west side. There's all kinds of. It's all kinds of stuff. There's more meaderies in Michigan than any other state in the country. There's like over 30 meaderies in Michigan now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Huh. Sounds like a road trip.
It is totally a road trip. Yeah, every time my folks live in northwestern Michigan, so I go through there, and I try to stay a couple days in Detroit so I can visit my friends who have meaderies there, and then there's a meadery 30 miles north of where I grew up. St. Ambrose is in Beulah, Michigan. So I go there, and they've got some really amazing meads too.
Cool. You've given me ideas now.
Oh, dude. Yeah, if you ever want a list, I have the list, like the list.
Okay.
So, yeah, I can tell you every meadery pretty much in every state.
Okay, you need to send me that list.
Okay. I'm updating the Got Mead list right now because it's a little out of date. But, we're at just over 400 meaderies nationwide right now.
So what are the biggest trends in commercial meaderies? I mean, I haven't looked at a lot of these places, but some of them I look at and I was like, yeah, that's like home mead 10 years ago.
Yeah, some of them are. Just like anything, just like any other style, or any other, craft beverage, there's good ones and there's bad ones. Fortunately, and I've seen this happen over the course of the last 20 years in judging meads and tasting them around the country, the prevalence of good commercial meads is much higher than it was. There was a point during which it was like 60% of the commercial meads were really bad. People were like, why are you putting that in bottles? Because it really shouldn't be in bottles. It should be in a drain somewhere. But now what we're seeing is it's more like 80% of the commercial meads out there are quite good. And some of them are truly excellent and like over the top. And then there's the other 20% are like average to why is that in a bottle? So and I've tasted some at all levels. But the trends right now that we're seeing are lots of sessions. Everybody and their brother is making session meads now. So, and that's because they're so quick to get them to market. I mean, it's like a 2 to 4 week turnaround.